Good evening, friends. Welcome to the panel discussion organized jointly by Bengal Peerless Kolkata Literary Meet and our Bengali magazine, Poroma. Poroma is a fortnightly magazine in Bengali, edited by me and published by Sharoda Printing and Publication, and it is targeted towards a thinking woman, the woman of substance. Indeed, the name Poroma denotes a woman who is empowered and has reached her full potential as a human being. We thought it fitting, therefore, that our discussion this evening should center around that gruesome act that so often renders a woman powerless, rape, and discuss ways of preventing it. Debates have been raging about what should be the punishment for rape. Justice Verma's committee has ruled out the death penalty or chemical castration and opted for life imprisonment instead. But not everyone is happy with the suggestions of this committee. Arguments and counter-arguments keep flowing. We have here a very distinguished panel who will shed light on whether capital punishment would be the answer. But let us not limit ourselves to the death penalty alone, but rather open up the discussion to include what measures would act as deterrents for rape and how our country could become safer for women. So we have with us this evening Ms. Shurmila Tagore. She, of course, needs no introduction. Apart from being a national award-winning film actor who has had the privilege of acting in many films directed by Satyajit Ray, she has led the Indian Board of Film Certification from October 2004 to March 2011. She is also the Goodwill Ambassador for UNICEF, and she's the great-grandniece of Rabindranath Tagore, which perhaps explains why she's such an articulate person with so much clarity of vision. Then again, we have someone who needs no introduction, Mr. Javed Akhtar. He's a noted poet, lyricist, and scriptwriter, as you all know. He's also one of the most vocal liberal voices in our country. Then we have Ms. Vrinda Grover. She is a Delhi-based human rights lawyer. She's also director of MARG. Vrinda is counsel for survivors of the 1984 anti-Sikh riot cases, the 1987 Hashimpura killings, and the 2008 anti-Christian riots in Kalahan. She's also done extensive work on rape law amendments and women's issues. Next, we have with us Ms. Anita Ognihotri, who is a noted author in Bengali. We at Poroma have had the pleasure and privilege of publishing her in our magazine. She's also an officer in the Indian Administrative Services, and she headed the Women and Child Development Department from 2006 to 2008. She's worked extensively among Adivasis and says that her life has been enriched by them. Many have compared her to Mahashweta Devi in that respect. We have next Mr. Kunal Basu. Author of several books in English, including a collection of short stories from which I had the privilege of filming The Japanese Wife. Interestingly, Kunal is also a professor at Oxford University, where he teaches business management. He was born to prominent communist parents, and he used to be very active in left politics in his student days. Lastly, we have Ms. Poroma Rai Choudhury. She's the country head of Corporate Communications and Public Affairs of Google India. Poroma takes an active interest in gender issues and has been involved with women's rights groups. As for me, I will try to act as moderator this evening as best as I can. I also promise to try to play the devil's advocate from time to time. So shall we start with Vrinda? Yes? Okay. So Vrinda, what do you think? We know your stance. We know the stand you have taken in this matter. You do not feel that the death penalty is warranted. Will you give us your reasons?
Good evening, everyone. And I'm very happy and very privileged to be here at the Kolkata Book Fair and to be part of this debate and discussion, which I really think needs to be carried out in forums like this. We need to sit, we need to talk, we need to debate ideas, we need to disagree, and we need to all think together. So thank you very much for this. Yes, my position on death penalty is a principled position where I would not support death penalty as a punishment for any crime, whether it is for this particular incident or any other case, for any other crime, whether it's a terrorist crime or any other. Having said that, yes, we did see outrage, we saw protests, we saw people asking for it. I'm speaking here as someone who's been in the women's movement and the feminist movement for over 20 years, and all of us in one voice said from across the country that we do not support death penalty. Now, why is it that women's groups, who should be the affected party, who should be the affected group, said no, we don't want the death sentence? And in fact, the Justice Verma Committee acknowledges that they came very close to giving the death sentence as a recommendation, but when they heard the women's groups and they heard us for 2 days, they realized that this was not the way forward. And why were we saying that? As a lawyer, let me try and tell you what the problem is. We right now have 7 years as the minimum for certain forms of rape and 10 years the minimum for other forms of rape, which can both be extended to life imprisonment. And life imprisonment in India does mean your natural life, unless it is remitted after 14 years, which is an executive decision that is taken. Why are we not seeing those kind of convictions? Even in cases, and we all know by now, that there is an extremely low rate of conviction. But even in cases where sentence is given, courts are actually awarding less than the mandatory minimum sentence. They are taking recourse to a provision in the law which says, unless for adequate and special reasons, you can reduce even the mandatory minimum. Which takes us into the issue of the institutional bias that exists not only at the police station, but is very much haunts the courtroom, which then compels them, depending on the circumstances, the woman, her life choices, to reduce. Why is punishment given? There are 3 reasons broadly. One is for a reformative, rehabilitative purpose, for a deterrence, or for retribution. Now, if we as a society, and these are all philosophical things which we need to think through, if we as a society want to make the state and law an instrument of retribution, which is that we will take revenge, and that is what we are inflicting on the person, then that is one stance, in which case, why only for, and I actually do not understand this phrase called rarest of rare cases of sexual assault. I find that an extremely problematic phrase. All cases of rape, sexual violence are brutal, horrific. So, these are just adjectives we seem to be using for certain cases, but they're all equally traumatic and difficult for the person who has to undergo it. The second is deterrence. All studies across the globe will show to you that awarding of death sentence does not deter anybody. In fact, the Indian data shows, and this is data released by the Ministry of Home Affairs no less, that prior to 1980, before the rarest of rare doctrine was evolved in law, we actually had more murders when death sentence was given with greater frequency by the courts. Post 1980, we've actually seen the rate of murders go down along with the rate of death sentence going down. So we clearly see that it's not about deterrence. So what is it that is pushing us and making us demand this? One is that we are angry. And when we are angry, we obviously get very upset and emotional, and we ask for what is the worst thing, which is a normal human reaction. But should law reform be guided by those instincts? Or is law reform a sober, mature process that needs to take many, many factors into account? Also, if you will see that you have actually, not only in the US, but increasingly in India, there are studies which are showing that it is a certain section of people who will be affected by this kind of sentencing, which would largely be people who will be from the lower classes, from the lower castes, because if you were to see the analysis of who is on the death row today, the majority of them would have had a legal aid lawyer. You go for a legal aid lawyer only if you cannot afford anyone else to defend you. So clearly there is a class, caste, other factors which are playing into all this, which we cannot turn away from. So for a host of these reasons, I think there is a very strong case to be made, apart from the fact that, I'll take 2 more minutes. Just on rape itself. And this is something that is commonly known, and I think we seem to, when we're trying to think it through, we seem to forget some of this. You have a very large majority of people who sexually assault girls and women belong to that family, the extended family, the circle of friends. It's extremely difficult.
It's
and
50%, I believe. I believe it's 50%.
It's actually a little more than 50%. It's very, very difficult to speak out. Many of us have never spoken about many of the experiences of sexual assault we've all had through our lives. And we are now saying that if you are going to report, if you're going to take this case forward, it should mean that this man has to be hanged. That may not necessarily be a way in which you can encourage reporting of such crimes. So I really think if we want to bring down sexual violence, death penalty is definitely not the way forward.
But Vrinda, by putting rape... I promised to play the devil's advocate, and let me just do that. I was just going to ask that, and I would like Poruma to answer this, by putting rapists and murderers behind prison walls, in prison, aren't we in fact brutalizing them as conditions exist today?
Hello, can you hear me? Yeah. Thank you, Kalam, for this very, very relevant debate and the distinguished panel. I'm sorry, I have a completely contrarian view to Vrinda's. I
Gotcha.
support capital punishment in this case. Because, and
This is very surprising. We can't make out who in the audience is against death penalty and who is not.
And I'll tell you why, because I'm not saying that...
Poruma, just hold it closer.
Just hold it like
Mike.
this. Yeah. So, and I would actually go back to the phrase rarest of rare cases. I completely agree. Like this? Yeah, okay. I completely agree. It shows I don't speak on stage, right? So I completely agree that any form of sexual assault or rape is equally heinous. But rarest of rare cases like this complete brutalization, which results in murder, raping of minors, raping of a physically or mentally challenged person, these are heinous crimes. And how will they stop if we don't have a deterrent? And data might show that, probably it is not a deterrent, but statistics are also damned lies. I would really think that speedy conviction, faster courts, and really stiff penalties would deter some of these cases. And I have, as a private citizen, I have a very strong view that if they are put in jail for 30 years, I don't want my taxes to pay for their upkeep. Sorry. Why? This is not crowd-pleasing. I really, really believe this is so. I really think Justice Verma's recommendations are diluted, and I wish something happens. That is my view. I'm sorry, but that's what I think.
Okay, but Poruma, thank you for that. This is a question that is asked in society, that why must we pay for the upkeep of people, of, brutal murderers and rapists in prison. But one very relevant question still remains, and that
May I
is...
come in here or not? Or
Yeah,
we don't?
that is... Sorry?
No, I think, can you really privilege, can you just privilege money over a human life? I mean, that I think is very unethical for a democracy.
Well,
Again, I have a contrarian view.
that is one question that is asked. The other question that really speaks out against the death penalty is that if death penalty were imposed, the chances of the rape victim being killed would increase many fold. Because I believe there was a psychiatrist who conducted a research on this topic, and the psychiatrist asked many rapists what they would do. Would they have committed this crime if there had been the death penalty? And the majority of the rapists answered, in that case, I would have killed the woman. So that's frightening. Javed Saab, would you like to talk about this?
Why else you think I'm here?
Sorry?
While he's still alive.
Well, at the very outset, I must say that I agree with Brinda, and I am definitely against the idea of capital punishment for rape for a few reasons. One, some of the people who have been insisting that the penal code should be changed and capital punishment should be given to a rapist have said in as many words that after a rape, a woman is like a zinda lash. She is living dead. And that is why she should be given, the rapist should be given capital punishment. You see, capital punishment has a shadow which has been described very well by this mindset that says that after rape, a woman is damaged forever. It is irreconcilable, she is irretrievable, and she is gone. Capital punishment confirms this. I don't like this idea. Of course, it's a traumatic experience. It is a traumatic experience. It is very ugly, it's very indecent, it is brutal. But she is finished, she is soiled forever, she is damaged forever. I'm not willing to accept that. One. Point two, our record tells us that capital punishment all over the world has not been a deterrent, as she has said. So there is no point in going into detail. Point three, our judges are very, very careful and conservative as far as giving capital punishment is concerned. If there is an iota of suspicion, iota of disbelief, this benefit of disbelief will go to the rapist. As it is, the percentage of people who are convicted is shockingly low. If the capital punishment enters the scene, it will become even lower because judges will not take chances. As far as her logic is, Paruma's logic is concerned, that why should state money should be spent on a rapist for 30 or 40 years? In that case, I'm not interested in spending my money on pickpockets also, on thieves, on dacoits, on scamsters. So what do we do? Kill all of them? Give capital punishment to everybody? That is not the remedy. She doesn't believe in jail, it seems. So, yeah, fine. I mean, first of all, we shouldn't think that there will be so many rapists and that our national budget will go out of control. So, the final note is that I don't agree with capital punishment's idea. Yes, there should be stronger punishment, like instead of 10 years or 7 years, you can make it lifelong one. Besides that, what is important, much more important than the capital punishment or 10 years, what has happened? That you have to have better investigation. You have to sensitize police force, people who investigate. They have certain bias. And not only men, even women officers. I'll tell you a story. A woman in Bombay was badly beaten by her husband. Badly beaten by her. Her eyes had popped out. arm was broken, her shoulder was fractured and so on. And she was taken to the hospital and a female police officer spoke to her. He said, "Why did your husband beat you? You must have done something." She said, "I didn't do anything." "Why? Is he mad that he has beaten you like this? You must have done something. Tell me honestly, what did you do?" She said, "I washed clothes. I put it in the courtyard, and when it was raining, I forgot to pick up the clothes. And this woman officer said, 'Dekha, didn't I tell you? You must have done something.'" This is the mindset.
Yeah, that's it. I think we need to change the mindset, and I think it might be worthwhile to try and explore how we could change that mindset. Unless, Kunal, you have something to say about the death penalty or the conditions of prisons. Would you like to?
Yeah. Okay. I mean, look, this is a 40-year-old debate. It's not new. We are doing it now here, but in the US, this debate has raged for 40 years. Okay. In favor of death penalty has stood fast was the Republican Party, and against the death penalty has been Amnesty International and the Society for Criminologists. Okay. All these arguments have been trotted out. These are important arguments, weighty arguments, okay, such as, is it a deterrent or not? General findings, it's not a deterrent. The criminal does not think about consequence when committing the crime. Okay? Are we paying too much for the prison system? This has come back and back and back during the Bush administration particularly. And it has encouraged judges in the southern states of the United States to hand out more death penalties. I completely agree with Shormila. We should not be dealing in the currency of money and human life. This is not what our civilization is about. It may be their civilization, it's not our civilization. Okay? There are other issues that have also come up in terms of, are these prisons, do they further brutalize the person? Okay? Of course they do. In our society do. And that calls for a separate debate. It calls for a separate round of discussions. Now, the advantage of being with like-minded people, as we are here, is we are in a position to extend the notion of deterrence and not simply talk about whether it should be death penalty or not. Because in the final analysis, there is no clinching argument that will settle this debate. In the final analysis, it's the sensibility of a people, of a society that will determine. Europe has said no. The Americans have said yes. We in India are sort of in between. We have said yes, but we don't subject too many people to capital punishment. Okay? But the whole notion of deterrence is broader than that. How will you mete out punishment to anybody, death sentence or non-death sentence, to anybody unless there is proper prosecution? Okay? Thanks to Google, I did search on what happens to police officers who mistreat victims who come to thanas. What happens to police officers who file faulty FIRs or refuse to take FIRs? Okay? In almost 100% of the cases, nothing happens to them. Okay? At the most, they get transferred or suspended for a few weeks or a few months. Now, we should be talking about penalty for rapists. Now, let's talk about penalty for rape abettors. These are people who are equally culpable, who are equally responsible. We have no law, we have no framework in the country to say, you are a police officer, you have mistreated this woman who's come, a victim who's come to the station, and this is your penalty, this is your legal penalty. Okay? We haven't done that. What about lawyers? There are lawyers, particularly, as you pointed out, the people who are from the lower castes and lower classes, from minority communities. Okay? Lawyers have manipulated court proceedings. Okay? Intimidated victims, they have intimidated witnesses, etc. What penalty exists in society with regards to lawyers? It does not have to be necessarily a legal penalty, remember, but it can be a social penalty, it can be a political penalty, and we need to broaden this notion of penalty. The last 2 points I wanted to make is, what about, and you're part of the corporate world, what about companies, organizations that do not have adequate laws and deterrences to prevent sexual harassment in the workplace? You know, 60% of all rapes in China are committed in the construction sector. Okay? In the organized sector, for multinational companies, there are rules and regulations. What happens to women who build the highways, who build our flyovers, who build the multi-storied buildings in which we all live? That's where most of it happens. So what about a stronger approach towards prevention of rape and sexual harassment in the workplace? And finally, I have to raise this because a lot of people from cinema in this audience, what do we do to people? What do we do to lyricists, directors, actors, producers who put in songs like "Main Tanduri Murkh hai yaar, Main Tanduri Murkh hai yaar"? What penalty will you have against them? If you clap along, if you sing along, if you dance along these songs, then aren't we all acting as rapists? Okay. And therefore, I think today a war is being waged against women. Let's not slight it anyway. A war is being waged against women. And everybody, in all professions, in all walks of life, everybody needs to stand up to fight back.
Now, I want to say something on this. No, I don't want to derail the conversation here
No,
because
but,
what you just
yeah,
said,
after the-
what you have just said is, will take, it's a subject for another debate, But you know, this blaming the image is not at all correct because if sexism and sexist, today's image is paramount and I agree with you that all images must be critiqued and we must engage with it. But to just blame images for what exists in society is taking the agency away from the real perpetrators to somebody else, something else.
Yeah,
so it's again, whether you're on street or whether you're on the screen, the woman is the provocateur. So we need to move away from that
Absolutely.
also.
I totally agree.
Let's not
Yeah.
derail this. Let's stick to what we are talking. We must have another session on this.
Javed Saab, you were going to say something.
I don't think there's any need to be defensive. The fact is that in recent years, the aesthetics in the society has taken a dip, and it is reflected in cinema also. Films are not made in any cultural void. They are film industry and society. Films and society are not in watertight compartment. They reflect each other. There is a kind of absence of certain aesthetics, certain decency, certain culture in the society, and it is seen in cinema also. Cinema is a manifestation of what is happening in the society. I couldn't agree more that there's a war declared on women, but I will add to it. This war is 5,000 years old. Yes. The fact is this.
The war
All
is
the religions of the
5,000
world are
The war
anti-women.
is 5,000 years old, says Javed Saab, and we all agree. In fact, there was a time when our society was matriarchal, long time ago. And what we can get from legends like Vikram Urvashi is that women, when they were in power, were equally brutal to men. This might sound strange, but the custom at that time was that after the man impregnated the woman, the man would be killed. There's this legend of Vikram Urvashi, you know that. But because Urvashi fell in love with Vikram, therefore Vikram was spared. Now, of course, a legend is a legend, but the thing is that these legends are born out of practices of the time. But what I would like to ask Anita is whether, sorry, just a minute, Javed. What I would like to ask Anita is, do you think this present war against women, the way women are being harassed, is it because women have started earning, there is this emergence of the new woman that men cannot deal with? A lot of people seem to think that.
I will just take it a little back from both what Kunal said and what Javed Saab said. See, if you say that it is 5,000 year old, you are merely taking your eyes from that issue. I think Kunal made a very important point. What is he trying to say? Women have a right to a violence-free world. This is their fundamental right. Anybody who incites violence against women should be having some kind of accountability before law. I think that is what he tried to make, and that is a very important point. Let us not think in terms of silos. Now, what we have been seeing, I mean, after this Delhi incident happened, we were kind of mortified, traumatized for a number of days. People said that, well, you were all sensitive because this happened in Delhi and, it's an elite area after all, it's urban and kind of, it has hit the upper middle class on their face. But many people like me also felt that it brought back in our mind memories of collective failure. And whatever you talk about the Burma Commission report, this is a 600-page report which I just have a cursory reading in 3 days. It may be diluted in parts, but it addresses very important issues. See, what happens in case of rape? Many of us have a knee-jerk reaction. Rape, I do not want to distinguish as a very special crime. It is the most brutal thing against the bodily integrity of a woman. That's all. But what happens the moment you look at woman as a repository of your social values and your family's honor, and everybody starts thinking, from the police person in the thana, to the society, to the parents or everybody, rest of the society and citizens, the entire reaction becomes so complicated. I have heard responsible people's representatives said कि rape के बाद औरत जिंदा लाश हो जाती है. It's nonsense. I mean, why? She is just like a victim. I won't even use the word victim. She is the survivor of an attack. It is the duty of the state and the society to see that she is not taken away from her livelihood and she maintains a normal life. Now, this is a fundamental idea of justice. Now, question is, this is a logical gap which I thought I'll address. In an offense like rape, punishment has no great implication for the process of giving out the justice, something which Brinda pointed out. It is extremely important. I have been working in the grassroots level. And see, what you have to understand, what is the process in which we reach the justice? Today you may say that, okay, it is mandatory. A judge has to mete out the death sentence. How will he do it? You cannot raise a superstructure on a ground that is hollow. What happens in the first 96 hours of the offense is extremely critical, where a girl can't even enter a police station unaccompanied by a male companion without being asked questions about her antecedents and her character and the way she dressed and what was her profession, etc. After that, forensic evidences are not picked up. In a city like Calcutta, heart of Calcutta, the police think that without a court's order, a woman cannot even be medically examined, something which has no basis in law, but is continuing. After that, by indifference, by cynicism, and something which you described very well, your evidence is lost. Your evidence is ignored. Then what does the public prosecutor and the police officer do in the court? The case fails. The judges seek for different reasons corroboration of the fact without treating that the woman is an important witness, the principal witness in the case. Now, after everything is lost by your first 4 or 5 days delay, indifference, and all kinds of collective criticism, what will the punishment come from? I mean, I entirely agree with what you said, that our execution has gone down, but rate of murder has come down in the country. So in case of rape, you have to find out that it is a lone journey, most often, of a woman from the moment of entering the police station and suffering indifference and hostility in the court, where everybody tries to prove that she has done an act of great shame by coming out to complain. Now, this is something where you have to look at this and strengthen her at each point. I do not know how many of you have heard the story of Sister Valsa John, whose name found a mention only in some regional papers of Jharkhand probably. You know what happened in her case? A girl who was her associate was gang raped in a village hut. She wanted to lodge an FIR. Her parents went to the police. Police immediately asked for money from the girl's family, boy's family, and said, you pay us and pay up the girl and settle up the matter. Insistent, the girl's father was insistent. She said, no, FIR has to be taken. They waited, 15 days passed in the process. Sister Valsa John, who was a noted rehabilitation activist in the area, she took up the matter with the district magistrate. We instructed the DSP. DSP didn't refuse. He refused to lodge the FIR. Then the district magistrate and SP had to collectively tell that, okay, you come tomorrow, we will sit here, I will see that the DSP takes the FIR. The night before that, a mob of several hundred, armed with choppers and guns and knives, went to Sister Valsajan's house and killed her. After Sister Valsajan was murdered, intervention of the state's chief minister was needed to get the FIR lodged. So FIR was lodged for rape first after 27 days. By that time, all the evidence has been washed out, so everybody will come out of this. And after that, of course, Sister Valsajan's FIR for her murder was taken. So if you look at the sequence, you see what is the journey and where does the penalty come. Penalty is the end of the story. To reach the end of the story, you have to build a foundation for which today neither the state actors, nor the citizenship, normal citizenry, nor the society is ready to stand by. That is why I feel Verma Commission has addressed some of very important issues. I do not know how far they will be materialized. They have suggested changes in the Evidence Act, change the definition of sexual assault by proposing changes in section 375, suggested changes in the woman's right of self-defense in case of rape and kidnapping. And also similar changes have been proposed in many, many things. This will all need amendment of the Act, no doubt. But one thing he has said, that it is the state who has been principally responsible and accountable for not being able to give the woman a life which is completely free of violence. It is her right, which is a fundamental right. So if we look at it this way, you will see it is not the punishment which is at all critical. What we need is conviction, reasonable speed of disposal of a case, and the fact has to be established that the survivor is not looked upon as a repository of her family or social values. I think these are some of the very big operational issues.
Thank you so much. Vrinda, I think you wanted to, thank you, that was very illuminating. Vrinda?
I just want to add a few things to what Anita just said. One, I think while we talk about the obligations and duties of the state, I do want to come back to this being 5,000 or maybe older than that. And patriarchy subsists and survives in all of us, in our homes. So let's not externalize this to such an extent that these 6 men are the demons in the country, and once they are hanged, we are all women going to be having a good time.
Right.
And I also always wonder that how come we react so strongly when it is rape, but we do not react when it is sexual harassment, we do not react when it is molestation, and many other things which Kunal referred to. And does that somewhere feed into exactly what Javed Sahab said? And while we decry the women politician and parliamentarian who stands up and says Zinda Lash, do we somewhere also believe in that analysis? And therefore for us, these are minor crimes. It's not about the dignity of the woman. It is that ultimate crime where somebody else's woman has been penetrated by a man who is not supposed to penetrate her. And that is somewhere...
Jhoota ho gaya.
That feeds into us also, and that is why we don't respond the way we do. So a lot, I feel it's also a moment of...
Vrinda, I just want to ask you, apropos of this, that, sexual harassment, which is called by this ridiculous name, eve teasing, should that not be a non-bailable offense?
I think sexual harassment is actually a very large range of acts, gestures. Supposing I'm walking on the street, not supposing, when most women are walking on the street, and somebody whistles at you, or sings one of those stupid, obnoxious songs which you do not want to be sung at you. I'm not necessarily sure that it helps to make it non-bailable. I think as a society, we have lost our art of naming and shaming, and socially ostracizing. Taking that person as a society to his or his home and saying, "Aapka beta, aapka bhai aise kar raha hai." कहीं पर जिम्मेदारी समाज की है. We have to be responsible as a society. Courts and police stations are never the avenue to liberate a society. And we actually, if there is a war going on women, then liberation is what we are looking for. And I just want to add a couple of things to what Anita said, that, this whole process of courts and things. I think we need to move a little bit away from this, that if within the first 96 or whatever many hours evidence is not collected, there's nothing left. I think that's also fallacy in which we understand rape. What is the most important piece of evidence in a rape trial is the testimony of the woman. It is not what you are going to get out of her body. Yes, in this present case, it was so very, very brutal that the amount of evidence available is huge. But that is not true of many, many cases. And rape, as presently defined, which of course Justice Verma Committee has expanded and we hope that it will become the law, even a penetration without an intercourse is rape today under Indian law. So what is the evidence of injuries we are looking for? What is it that we want from the woman's body? In fact, the whole medical procedure works against the woman. Because what are they trying to find out? They want to find out what is the woman's sexual choices that she has made. And doctors write this. I have seen n number of MLCs which will come with, she is habituated to sex. What on earth is the relevance of that observation made by a doctor? And of course, since he's a doctor, he's the expert witness in court. He's not associated with any party.
So what if she's habituated to sex, if it's consensual
But
sex?
it influences the court.
No, I think, Brinda, I need to clarify my point here.
No,
What-
I'm not
No,
taking
no,
your point.
I'm not saying that this is the only thing. What I'm saying is, see, as people who are part of the legal system, you need a basic training. You need a basic sensitization and a drill. Most of us are not looking at these aspects at all.
No, I
Police
agree with you,
officers
but
don't
I-
understand what is to be done.
Sure.
A girl lies on the road, police spends time in deciding
No,
which
you're
thana they will
absolutely
go to.
right about the problems, but I think I would go back to what Kunal said. I have myself conducted n number of gender sensitization, gender orientation for police. It's a complete non-starter, it's a no-brainer. You want to make the police of this country work, there is a law, there is a procedure. If they don't work according to procedure, they will have to face punitive consequences, and in fact the Verma Committee report says that. It says if you don't lodge an FIR, go to jail for 5 years. I would like to take a bet. You send 20 cops to jail in this coming year and FIRs will start getting lodged.
Agreed.
That's what you
Agreed.
need in this country.
Very good.
Agreed.
The problem is often that the police also come from the same mindset, that the patriarchal mindset. I would like to ask Javed Saab how you feel that we can change the mindset. Shormila? Shormila, why don't you tell us? You just said that,
I have something to say, but I'll say it later.
Shormila, you just said that, films actually show what, is manifested in society. Why don't you tell us?
I'm sort of really, this has been so interesting that I don't think after the Mathura case, which was in Brinda 1972 or early 70s, this kind of churning has happened. So I think this is the tipping point, and and after the Justice Verma report, because what the government couldn't do, what nobody else could do, at least Justice Verma and the report has tried to engage with the problem and has heard the hurt and the sentiment and the rage with the youth. But of course, they have stepped back from passion and they've come out with this wonderful report desisting from the death penalty, which is taking somebody's life, which is irreversible, and it's coming from the point of, or thinking that the state must establish an ethical standard for public morality, because state cannot take somebody's life. So that is where they're coming from. And also, as many speakers said before, that it is not a deterrent, because I think Kunal said that when a person is committing the crime, he thinks he's not going to be caught. So it's not really a deterrent. And in the southern states of America, where the death penalty exists, there is the highest crime rate there. So it is not really a deterrent. And as you said, that, गरीबों को तो फांसी देते हैं, but अमीर आदमी को तो फांसी नहीं लगा अभी तक. So there are people who are waiting in the death row are all terribly poor. So many people, I think, have many, and also I don't think the death is the ultimate punishment, because I think to be in rigorous imprisonment for the entire life, I think is a better way of punishing somebody than just taking his life and then let it be over. And as I don't know, most of you probably know, that rape happens within the family. It's your brother, it's your father, it's your uncle, it's neighbors and relatives. So how many people are you going to kill? It is just not practical. And again, this shame and honor business, which we all have bought into. And yes, we are part of that patriarchy. The women, like right now I'm coming from Jaipur, there is this girl who has come in with some injury to her vagina, and everybody thinks it's rape. But she's 13-year-old and she's denying. She's saying the same story over and over again, that I fell down, it was a very sharp brick and I've got hurt. But there is no other injury to her. And why she's saying it, obviously she knows the perpetrator, she knows whatever reason, is that shame and honor. Now the Justice Verma, and of course before that the amendment of the law was in progress, they have taken away this cuddly protectionist language, and they're no longer calling it eve teasing, they're no longer calling it outraging of modesty, all those awfully inadequate words. So the language is changed now, they're calling rape as a rape. But how do you treat the mindset which we have all inherited as women also for over centuries, that, as you said, that woman is the repository of honor, not just for the family, but also for the community. So everything is, and whereas a man is irresponsible and bichara, he has no control over his emotions and his urges. Why? Because he's abdicated his will and responsibility. So, so society thinks, and then the police is also part of that patriarchy. So he sees the position of women in society, and he thinks he's the man. So he takes decision, he becomes the moral arbitrator. So he is saying that how many, like in Mathura's case, the Supreme Court went against the High Court order and said that there was no external injury and she's had multiple sexual partners earlier. So this is the approach that we really, really need to look at and change. And of course, the police reform, as you said, but I think the Justice Verma report is something that has really touched us, and I think it's a wonderful. Of course, there are certain areas that the report is silent on. They're not talking about a time-bound, like the women activist had wanted 3 months trial period. So, he's not done that. He's said speedy courts, but not a time-bound, because minimum, people are waiting for 10 years for justice. The Jharkhand place where many men chased this nun in Chhattisgarh or in, and there's still, there's so much political pressure on not bringing it to the head. Today, the Kerala, this girl, a minor at that time, 17 years ago, was raped, was abducted for 42 days and was raped continuously for that many by a bus conductor, etc., etc. So they are reopening the case because the trial court had given adequate punishment, but the High Court let all these people go. Now the Supreme Court has ordered that, and because of this, what happened on the 16th of December, many good things are happening. People are reopening cases, looking at things, and looking at things.
Yeah, and we need to take a look at how to change this mindset, which is what I was asking you to comment on.
First of all, I must say that I totally agree that there should be stringent laws. The police should be responsible, and if they don't behave the way they should behave or act the way they should be sacked, they should be fired, they should be put in the jail, as Vrinda said, and things will become better, there is no doubt about it. But how many rules we can make? In a society where almost 95% rapes take place within the four walls of the homes and houses, what do we do? Actually, allow me to quote one of my shares that says, Bunyad means foundation. मेरी बुनियादों में कोई टेढ़ थी. There was something crooked about my foundations. अपनी दीवारों को क्या इल्जाम दूं? The fact is, it is, you make laws after laws, but ultimately, as long as you don't change the mindset of the society, the way they look at women, the way they conceive women, the way they think, women are either things or chattel. They are not human beings for them. They are equals. They don't know women. In many parts of India, I don't want to name any state or a city, an average young boy, by the time he becomes 20, has never spoken to a girl for 5 minutes who is not his sister. Now he has only seen women. And at home, what has he seen? He has seen his mother being beaten. Now, what kind of morality, what kind of attitude he will develop? The only way, there are short remedies and long remedies. We have to have laws, we have to have fast-track courts, we have to have more sensitized. I don't know, I wonder how much we can sensitize the policemen, but yes, we can frighten them into doing their duty by putting them in jails. Yes. But at the same time, what is important that we treat our daughters well. And from there, the revolution will start. You empower your daughter and keep on empowering your daughters. That is the solution. If in every household the daughter will be empowered, the society will.
But who will empower the daughters? Do you think?
The parents.
Yeah, but
when I
who
read
will
in the
educate
paper,
the parents?
a girl is burned. No, I must complete this point.
Yes.
When I read that a girl is burned by her husband or her in-laws, the first people whom I blame are the parents of the girl.
But do you think that we should start having gender sensitization, gender education in our schools all over?
At home and in school.
CBSC is already initiated.
Okay, Paroma has something to say.
I completely agree, and I don't think this sensitization is really, confined for sections of society. You have a UP police cop, if you remember, UP police person, you remember the Arushi case. After that brutal murder of the young girl, the first thing he said was, uska character bahut kharab tha. The first public statement. And you will have politicians who will say what a mother of two was doing on Park Street at 2 a.m. Okay? So, and I represent the corporate sector, and I would say, the organized multinational kind of companies are actually quite often very, very sensitive to this and have stringent, punishment or deterrence. But, there also in the most rarefied of atmospheres, we have chief executives ogling at women's chests across the desks. And, and saying things like, sort of appreciative comments or not so appreciative comments about how women dress or, the kind of clothes that they wear to office. This is happening at all levels, all the time. And, I'm sure every woman in this room has faced this. So sensitization is a very long process. Absolutely needs to start at homes.
No, it is not
schools.
either or all. It is not either or all.
Yeah.
It is both.
Yeah,
both.
I'm saying
And
homes.
chief executives are really sensitive people or sensible people who has given this guarantee.
Okay.
Who has told you? Who has told you that?
They're not. So, at home, in school, by the media, by the lawmakers, everywhere. It is not going to stop or, cease in a day. It's a proper lifelong process.
I'm afraid that we have almost run out of time. We'll let Kunal and Anita have the last say. Kunal, would you like to say something first, or would Anita?
Okay,
and then...
no, this is actually...
I'm sorry, but this will have to be really short. 3 seconds each, all right.
This is taking from Javed Saab's question of treating the girl well. The war against women have now spread to an extent where even before birth, her life is compromised. There's a place called Beed in Maharashtra, which accounts for the sharpest decline in sex ratio of the girls children, there truckloads of people go from all over Maharashtra and Madhya Pradesh to have the female fetus detected by ultrasound and diagnosed. And I don't want to dramatize. There are people who have been recently arrested who have dogs in their farmhouse who feed only on female fetus. These are documented facts. This is not fiction. I have written about this. Okay, now question is, if you reduce the space of the woman to such an extent that she is not even allowed to be born, on the ground that she will be tortured if she is born, then who is going to create the space for her, and what shall we do with sensitization? This is a very sad fact.
Kunal, last word from you, and then Javed Saab has a poem that we... Oh, she has to say something. Okay, 3 seconds. All right. Okay. All right, Kunal.
Obviously, we have talked about long-term, deep-seated change in mindsets of human beings, and we've also talked about legal interventions. Since this is a literary meet, I thought I should quote from you famous lines by Alexander Solzhenitsyn. When Solzhenitsyn came to exile in New York, he wrote, rather sadly, that a society that has no laws is impossible to live in. He was obviously referring to the Soviet Union. But his experience of America, he said, a society that only has laws but has no morality is impossible to live in. Okay. So,
Okay, Vrinda.
Okay, very quickly, but I would like to just throw this here. We'll talk about it perhaps another time. It is a little provocative, but I think we need to keep it in our midst. We have seen sexual violence targeting women during times of communal pogroms which take place in this country. We have seen it in caste riots, and on many occasions we have seen it in conflict areas, and at those moments we are silent. Is there a link between that sexual violence which all of us as a nation and society are condoning and what happened in Delhi? And do we need to raise our voices each time?
That's a collective failure.
So we'll end with Javed Saab's poem to his daughter.
As a matter of fact, it is rather a depressing situation, but let us end this session on an optimistic note. I had written a poem for my daughter Zoya, but actually it is for every daughter. It is about empowerment. It's about understanding yourself and your identity. And that is what I suppose we have to tell our daughters. दो राह means दो रास्ते जो है. ये जीवन एक राह नहीं, एक दो राह है. पहला रास्ता बहुत सहल है, इसमें कोई मोड़ नहीं है. ये रास्ता इस दुनिया से बेजोड़ नहीं है. इस रास्ते पर मिलते हैं रीतों के आंगन, इस रास्ते पर मिलते हैं रिश्तों के बंधन. इस रास्ते पर चलने वाले कहने को सब सुख पाते हैं, लेकिन टुकड़े टुकड़े होकर सब रिश्तों में बट जाते हैं. अपने पल्ले कुछ नहीं बचता, बचती है बेनाम सी उलझन, बचता है सांसों का ईंधन, जिसमें उनकी अपनी हर पहचान और उनके सारे सपने जल बुझते हैं. इस रास्ते पर चलने वाले खुद को खोकर जग पाते हैं. ऊपर ऊपर तो जीते हैं, अंदर अंदर मर जाते हैं. दूसरा रास्ता बहुत कठिन है. इस रास्ते में कोई किसी के साथ नहीं है, कोई सहारा देने वाला हाथ नहीं है. इस रास्ते में धूप है, कोई छांव नहीं है. जहां तसल्ली भीख में दे दे कोई किसी को, इस रास्ते में ऐसा कोई गांव नहीं है. ये उन लोगों का रास्ता है जो खुद अपने तक जाते हैं, अपने आप को जो पाते हैं. तुम इस रास्ते पर ही चलना. मुझे पता है ये रास्ता आसान नहीं है, लेकिन मुझको ये गम भी है तुमको अब तक क्यों अपनी पहचान नहीं है.
Thank you very, very much. I wish we had more time and we wanted to take questions from the audience, but I'm sorry, we've totally run out of time. I want to thank all our panelists, and I want to thank the Peerless Kolkata Literary Meet for being with us in this.